Hello and welcome to our first prize-led fundraising benchmarking and trends webinar. We're really thrilled by the response we've had to the webinar with over 600 UK charity fundraisers registering to attend. And we understand why. Prize-led fundraising is a really hot topic right now. Whatever you want to call it, prize-led fundraising, gaming, value add, value exchange, whatever it is, it's a fun, interactive and joyful way of fundraising. And we just love it at Woods Valldata. For those of you that aren't familiar with Woods Valldata, and I'm sure there's one or two of you out there, let me just share my screen so that you can see what it is that we do. Sorry, it just takes me a moment to share that. So a little bit about Woods Valldata. So our purpose at Woods Valldata is to help charities raise more funds for their causes. And we've been doing that for about 40 years. We specialise in a number of areas: Raffle, weekly lottery response handling, fulfilment services, digital scanning, direct debit processing, data strategy insight, whatever you need for your fundraising services, we're there. And we work with around 75 charity partners. We're really passionate about what we do at Woods Valldata, and we're passionate about what you do too, and we're here to help you. And that's what today's webinar is all about. I'm Helen Hallahan, Head of Marketing at Woods Valldata, and your host for the next 90 minutes. Thankfully, you won't hear much of what I have to say, as we're joined by some of the best UK charity fundraisers in the sector today, and our very own Head of Data Strategy and Insight, Helen Dorr, who you'll be familiar with if you attended or watched one of our Impact of COVID-19 on Individual Giving webinars. And if you haven't watched them, you can download them on demand. Just go to our website. So a really special thank you to Maria Novell, who's Fundraising and Commercial Director at Guide Dogs, Pam Witherington, who's Fundraising and Marketing Director at Essex and Herts, sorry, Pam, Essex and Herts Air Ambulance, Holly Alcock, Individual Giving Manager at Alzheimer Society, and Rosie Ferron, Individual Giving Manager at National Trust. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we start. We've got Emma Corbett helping us in the background to make sure everything runs as smoothly as possible. If you see her, that's why she's here. Emma's our Business Development Director, and if you want to get in touch about anything to do with Woods Valldata, please reach out to her. You can get her on charities@woodsvalldata.co.uk. Ask her in particular about our print price promise for your next raffle campaign, and our new lottery product, Affinity, which is a pooled lottery with insured top prizes, making it an attractive addition for any charity or society who's wanting to explore weekly lottery and what it can offer. So at the bottom of your screen, or somewhere on your screen, you should have a chat function. If you want to start a conversation with everyone who's attending today, please use the chat function. That's what it's there for, so you can make use of the network. Just make sure you address it to all attendees. And the event is on LinkedIn too. So if you go to LinkedIn and find our events, you can click on there and you can carry on the chat after the webinar. We'll begin the webinar today with some raffle and weekly lottery benchmarks and trends presented by Helen. We'll then all have a discussion about some raffle and weekly lottery hot topics, including where prize-led fundraising sits as part of the overall fundraising mix, what's working, what's not, and where we see the future of prize-led fundraising, including channels, acquisition, and we might even get around to having a chat about what a typical raffle and weekly lottery player looks like. If you have any questions about any of these areas or anything relating to raffle or weekly lottery, please ask it in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. We'll try and answer as many questions as we can at in the time remaining at the end of the webinar. And if there's not enough time, we'll do our best to answer them separately. We'll be doing a live poll as part of the session, so watch out for that. That's a chance for you to vote on or answer a question, and then we'll share the answers live so that you can compare what your answers are to everyone else who's attending here today. We are recording the webinar, so if you know of anyone that wanted to watch but weren't able to make it today, we'll send out a link to you early next week. So without any more ado, I'm very pleased to introduce our first panelist, Helen Dorr. Helen is Head of Data Strategy and Insights at Woods Valldata. She works closely with our charities and account directors, and her role is to support their fundraising activities. She delivers actionable insights and data strategy recommendations alongside wider charity benchmarking and trend analysis, which is basically what she's doing today. She brings her experience of working in the charity fundraising sector and working on data and CRM planning and insights projects. Helen compiled the following presentation and a report, a very comprehensive report to go alongside it, which will be available on our website and via a link that I'll send through in an email after the webinar for anyone that wants to read that. And don't forget, if you've got any questions for Helen, please use the Q&A function on your screens and pop the questions through, and we'll do our best to answer them at the end. Okay, thanks a lot, Helen.
Lovely, thank you. Let me just share my screen. There we go. There we go. Hold her up if some people can't see that. Yes, so thanks for coming. As Helen mentioned, there's a report which will be shared and available for everyone, which is a nice chunky 80 pages. So there's lots of information in there around the bigger kind of picture on prize-led fundraising and recommendations and where it sits in the fundraising mix, etc. But the purpose for today is to look at the benchmarking and trends section, which we've pulled out within it. So without further ado, prize-led fundraising isn't new, and we've got a lovely little timeline there just to demonstrate just how long raising money for good causes has been around in our heritage. First came Chinese Han Dynasty back in the BCs, and has been there all the way through with Elizabethan times, 14th, 15th, 18th, 19th century, and today still going strong. It's got a very bright future as well. So GC stats, and we'll have a look at the chart in a moment to go with this, but there's over 600 licensed raffles and lotteries according to the Gambling Commission as of last year, and 831 million in sales, 367 million of that going to good causes in their last report, which was a 10.7 increase on previous years. So growing all the time. You can see here from our just a little bit of kind of research that we've been doing. So YouGov top 25 most popular charities as of August 2020. You can see there by the ticks, the majority have got a lottery and or a raffle, and actually it's changing and growing all the time, even from that list that's there now. And those that don't are actually the kind of charities that don't necessarily kind of lend themselves to prize-led fundraising, children in need, comic relief, those sorts of charities. Pretty much everyone else that's big is busy being part of a prize-led fundraising strategy. Looking at the Mintel report from 2018 as well, you can see that anticipated growth. And if you look at the 2020 picture that we've got there, kind of halfway up around there, we're looking at 831 million sales. We're kind of bang on line for that continued growth. So looking really, really positive for the future. And likewise, if we look at the Gambling Commission stats, where those original numbers came from, that 831 sales on the right there, you can see the growth over years. And then more recently, looking again at some Gambling Commission reports and stats that they've been producing, you can see online participation. So you can see things starting to change and expand, not only kind of from a growth in sales, but also from a diversity of response channel, more traditionally, Raffle in particular, direct mail, but you can see online gaming starting to become more of a thing. So if we look here, we've got females more so in 2020, that pale purple on the right. Online gambling as a whole is increased year on year. Interestingly, on the right-hand side, you've got some of the older audiences starting to go online more, a real trend that we've seen more recently. And online participation in another lottery, i.e. our charity lotteries, again, has increased over the last year. So really positive moves forward in the way that prize-led fundraising is made up. And actually, it's more important than ever. So these are from the Charity Benchmarks COVID-19 Impact Monitor. They're releasing their final one, so we'll have some Q4 soon to add in, which would be great. But the key point of this is you can see this year, so 2020, compared to the year before, 2019, on cash and regular giving, the percentage of the income portfolio, cash and regular giving has become really, really important in maintaining money during these difficult times. Raffle obviously part of the cash income and lottery part of the regular giving. You can see that also in our weekly lottery cancellations. So from within our own data, you can see that weekly lottery cancellations have actually reduced 2020 versus 2019. That's kind of related to acquisition. There's been a lot less acquisition out there during COVID, but the important thing really is that cancellations haven't shot through the roof. Weekly lottery income for charities has been really steady throughout the whole of COVID-19, and you can see that in that percentage of the regular giving income portfolio. Lotteries are really important in maintaining ongoing regular giving income for charities. And then we have our raffle. So we've got our 0 to 12 month raffle player bases at the top and our warm raffle averages below that there. And we'll go into more detail on those a little bit later. But the key point is you can see the uplift in response rate year on year and average gift across our 0 to 12 month raffle players and our warm raffle bases as a whole. So just demonstrating again, just how important raffle and weekly lottery has been to charities as a whole over the last year. To move into more of a look at the actual benchmark, so we're going to start with raffle. The data is aggregated, so just all raffles, but across the time period 2018 to 2020. So we've looked over the last 3 years. This just shows spring, summer, Christmas across those 3 years, all grouped up together to give you a sense of the general stats that we see. First thing to note is you can see that Christmas is the best performer, and that's pretty typical across raffle and cash. The response rate here goes from a sort of lower 18% up to a higher 18, nearly 19% of Christmas, and the average gift is a little bit higher as well. So it tends to just uplift everything at Christmas. Typical warm gift, 18 to 19 pounds. Typical warm average ask for raffle, 15 to 16 pounds, and a typical warm response we would see of 17 to 19%. Looking at that in just a little bit more detail, these are still our warm raffle bases. You can see here the response rate, year on year, average gift, average mailed volume, and average banked per name mailed. The general story here is that things are really positive at the moment. 2018 was actually a really strong year for response rates, but when we're looking at the volumes being mailed in 2020 across summer and Christmas, you can see that the response rates are really, really strong. Average gift is the highest we've seen for the last 3 years, and the average bank per name mailed, which is our kind of statistic just to give a sense of net income, really, you can see again that they're really strong year on year. This is our active player base. So we've just looked at warm raffles over the last 3 years. This is now specific active raffle players, so 0 to 12 month raffle player segments. It's quite a static, steady set of data, so it's a really nice one to compare over time because that selection will pretty much always be the same. And you can see here as well the kind of trends that we've just looked at amplified slightly. So looking at spring, summer, and Christmas across the 3 years aggregated, you can see here again that Christmas is a really strong performer for response. And across a 0 to 12 month raffle player segment as a whole, we'll always tend to see an average benchmark response rate of well over 30%, going up to 45 up here. The average gift as a whole will be around 18 pounds plus, so kind of going up to nearer 20, we tend to see at Christmas for a 0 to 12 month raffle player base. And that gives us an average bank per name mailed and ROIs of well over £5 normally, and that's pretty typical. Taking a slightly deeper dive into those again, so we can now see that spring, summer, and Christmas, but split out by year. And you can really see here the KPIs year on year and kind of the impact probably of COVID-19 over the last sort of year or so. So again, you've got your spring, summer, Christmas in 2020 getting really high response rates year on year, and the average gift as well was much higher across the board last year. Key thing to kind of take note from is your loyal raffle players, your 0 to 12 month players. They're active, they're engaged, they love playing the raffle with you, and they're continuing to play and play at higher levels during COVID. It's one of their ways of giving to you that they like to do. This is moving on to cold raffles. So cold direct mail and also digital paid. We've seen after GDPR, pretty much everything kind of ground to a halt on the cold direct mail front. But over the last year, things have started to come back to life. And I think potentially because we've had to try and find income from other sources where some acquisition and ongoing giving to our charities has been stopped with face-to-face events, etc., and shops. So cold direct mail and cold cash has come back to life a little bit, and these are some of the typical benchmarks that we're seeing, sort of 1 to 1.52% across cold DM, average gift 10 to 12. The play again rate, so when they are asked again after their first gift, they play at a really strong percentage. So if you can get that first average response rate working for you, then ongoing, they really will start to deliver and become valuable, hopefully, ongoing players for you. Cost per acquisition will really vary, but this is just an average across some of the ones that we see around the 25 to 30. With paid digital, we're seeing a real increase in Raffle over the last year, still very much growing. So these benchmarks may well change and develop over time, but kind of where we're sat at the moment. Average gift is slightly lower. The play again rate is slightly lower. And I think that will definitely change over time as we learn the best way to continue to communicate with our digital rafflers. And the cost per acquisition, again, an average, but it's an interesting area, this and one that we're going to track and keep a close eye on. With more raffles and lotteries going online and recruiting online, we are seeing more of an uplift in competition, I guess. So some of those CPAs are starting to shift and vary. And some have seen much higher CPAs over Christmas, I think, where there probably was quite a lot of activity. So I think that push to stand out and be different online will really be something that we see starting to come through over the next year. Having a quick look at online. So this is just our general percentage from raffles that we see online. So the percentage of the response and the percentage of the income, along with online average gift. This is largely from warm bases still at the moment. So people that are either responding online or have come through kind of from organic social email, but paid digital is starting to grow. So this is also part of the makeup here. Key thing is you can see the percentage of the response online over time is increasing, as is the percentage of the income coming in online. And the average gift too is also rising. So we are starting to see more and more response coming in online for raffles. Helen touched on profiles in the introduction, and we've done a little bit to try and understand kind of what a typical raffle profile is, and also we've got the other half for lottery in a moment. So typical raffle profile that we see, they're older, as you would expect, really. They're quite a typical kind of cash demographic. So older, 70 to 80, so really quite old actually for raffle. They are relatively well off, traditional in outlook, educated, majority attended university from what we can see, which I found quite interesting. And they really do follow the news. They're quite aware of what's going on around them and love gardening, love TV drama. As part of the profiling exercise, it also flags up opportunities for new audiences, kind of where they think from your typical demographic, where a new audience might work quite well for it. And this was, this is the one for raffles. So it's age 36 to 45, moderate to high household income, aspiring families. Interesting, comfortable with technology using smartphones, Uber and games consoles as we move to a more digital world. Although some of the more mature are actually becoming more online, particularly over the last year, the new audiences definitely will be. So that'll be a real shift that we'll see, I think, in the future. Moving on to lottery. So these are average players, chances and attrition, just a year view. Couple of key things to flag here. You can see our active players, active chances year on year here. You can see that actually we are slightly down in 2020 to what we saw across our data on 2019, but not massively. And again, kind of harking back to something I mentioned a moment ago, the key thing there is that we didn't see a massive loss of players and chances, people cancelling their direct debits left, right and centre off the back of COVID, which was something I think we all feared would happen. So again, highlighting that fact that lottery and regular giving is a really steady, important income channel, and has been, particularly steady in light of the last year. That attrition rate that you can see that is much lower than previous is largely due to a drop in acquisition, so a lot less face-to-face activity primarily. But when we look at a couple of other elements, so you can see here the cancellations. This is the most recent year against the year before in the red line, and you can see that steady lower cancellation rate that we've just been talking about. But the interesting thing is when we look at recruitment volumes, although they are lower and are expected to be lower with face-to-face kind of being out of action for a lot of last year, it's interesting to see that it is still grown year on year. So there was a real shift from kind of face-to-face when it got shut down to what else are we going to do? We've got to do something else. So that's where we saw a really marked shift into digital and DRTV as well in particular, making use of those lower media rates. So recruitment still happened, which is really, really positive to see. These are some of our typical benchmarks that we see for lottery. So the different kind of recruitment and conversion channels. First, average sign up, annual gift, and then attrition year one and average CPAs. Again, these will really vary from charity to charity and kind of what activity you're doing and volumes you're doing it in, etc. But to give you a sense, to give you a feel, a lot of the telephone and direct mail will tend to see a slightly lower annual sign-up gift is sort of 65. Digital, we tend to see coming in a little bit higher, 80 plus. And DRTV just sitting just below that. It's kind of around the £70 mark at the moment. Attrition year one, face-to-face is always quite high, with sort of warm conversion being a bit lower, of course. We are seeing at the moment digital sort of round about 25. It's still settling. Some see it a bit higher, some see it a bit lower. Again, I think a lot of it is around the targeting and people are still getting that right. So that can still vary quite a bit. DRTV at the moment, from what we can see, actually has quite a low year one attrition, which is really positive and hopefully will stay that way. Again, CPAs will vary a lot, but at the moment for digital, we're sort of seeing it around 45, 55, 65-ish, and then DRTV around about 80. And again, I think that might fluctuate and take a little while to kind of settle into a base level off the back of increased competition last year, and particularly with the DRTV rates as well. Probably came in a bit lower originally with some of the lower media rates, but will probably go up a little bit over the next year. A key benchmark and kind of trend to track with lottery as a regular giving program is attrition and retention. So across lottery on the whole, we tend to see around about an 8.7 average no-show rate. So people that have signed up and then cancel before their first payment. As well as that, in the chart below, you can see this is kind of how many weeks it takes for a supporter to typically cancel on a lottery. And you can see here, it's all in the first 3 months, really. That's where that really high risk, along with the no-shows, is. And that's where it's really important to focus your time on a lottery when you get a new player on board. Some key things that we recommend thinking about. So winning actually has a really big impact on retention. Where we've done some analysis on that, it could take an average lifetime value from 3.5 years up to 4.5 years if they've won. So having lots of opportunity to win is a really, really good thing to do to get people engaged and keep them playing with you. Reactivation works. You have to get your channel right, you have to get your timing right, but if you contact people fast and try and get them back on board and understand why they may have cancelled and see if you can do anything about that, maybe it's a case of giving them a holiday or dropping the player rate for a little bit, then that can work really well. Trigger comms, really important. Your welcome pack, you can see how quickly people drop off, and trying to get to them before they cancel before their first payment, or sort of maybe think they haven't done the right thing. Stopping that knee-jerk reaction post sign up is really, really important. So if you can engage with them, make it fun, make it lively, give them opportunities to do other things, potentially more games, you know, that's a really good way to try and encourage them to stay, get them on board and keep them playing with you. And then upgrades as well. Upgrades obviously will increase your chance rates over time, but also it's a really nice way to have a conversation with someone if you do it on the phone, and thank them and engage them with the product, and hopefully keep them playing. So lottery profiles, slightly different to Raffle in that they are, at the moment at least from what we can see across our profiles, slightly, you know, they are mature but not as old as Raffle. They have modest income, they're careful with their money, so actually slightly less affluent. And they have smaller semi-detached homes, priced below the average on the whole. They're more vocational qualifications rather than university educated. They're very happy with their life. They love their garden, their nature, family are important to them. So they are a slightly different demographic to Raffle. Again, looking at that new audience and where the potential of lottery sits, quite young, which is great. So real potential there for the future. Aged late 20s to mid 40s, working young families, they live busy lives, children. You can see that kind of family thing that ties the two different groups together. And they enjoy social networking, games console, and have semi-detached homes. So they're a little bit earlier on in their life, but can kind of see the trends of how they're likely to become a typical lottery person. Okay, looking to the future. So just carrying on with that profiling for a moment. These are our lottery and raffle mosaic classifications, which is what we used for the profiling. You can see the lottery players in red, raffle players are in grey. This line sort of around about 100 is kind of where it starts to over-index or be more typical than your average bear across the UK. So this here is where we have our over-indexing on raffle and lottery at the moment. And you can see raffle is quite sort of the more affluent prestige positions, country living, senior security. They're older, they're settled, they're affluent. Lottery likewise isn't far behind senior security, so slightly less affluent. And over here, we've got them kind of coming up on our vintage value, which again is sort of a slightly, it's mature, but not as old as senior security, not quite as wealthy as prestige positions. Interestingly, though, those two new opportunities that we've just talked about, domestic success and aspiring homemakers, this is where the future is. And you can see here on these ones here, family basics, renters, municipal tenants, they're younger, slightly less affluent groups of people. They are also kind of really starting to show on lottery. So I think this will be in the future, particularly where lottery really starts to change and starts to shift in its profile, particularly with some of the new activities that we're seeing, digital, and DRTV is bringing younger people on board. So I think we're keeping a close eye on the numbers, but I think once we've got enough volume there to be able to kind of think about having a look at them, we can see, I would think, a kind of different type of lottery player coming through to those that are more traditional sort of within mature lotteries, where warm conversion and face-to-face were probably the key acquisition and conversion channels for a long time. Quite exciting. Just the last few points really on some things that we're seeing going on around us at the moment. So this is a quote from one of the charities that participated in the Charity Benchmarks COVID-19 Impact Monitor. Their key point being is that in the past, they wanted to move into new, different ways of doing things, digital in particular, as an example for this one. But they were struggling to get maybe some of the more typical profiles of charity supporters to engage with them in that way. But with COVID, everything's changed. Everyone is much more digital and mobile savvy, used to virtual events and joining things on Zoom. So I think that's changed and will change forever, which really opens up different ways of communicating with new supporters, new players, new ways to recruit prize-led fundraisers into the mix. Some innovations that we've seen within prize-led fundraising off the back of all those things, really. So obviously a rise in online social media and DRTV, as we've talked about, and a drive to digital play. So a lot of interest in online raffles and lotteries player sites, and people reviewing those along with their wider creative as well to stand out and be different. We've seen a breaking down of silos within charities, so online and offline working a bit more closely together. And again, I think that's something that will probably stay, that charities have, you've all enjoyed, breaking down some of those silos and working more closely together. We've seen more of a focus on response actually, and donations being a separate step on response slips to increase the value. That's something that's come through a bit over the last few months and has been working quite well. And obviously extra draws, been lots of work around incentives and extra draws to bring some excitement to the packs, to keep people playing, to thank them for their giving over such a difficult time. Been some really interesting stuff done around extra incentives. And then thanking, again, making the most of every opportunity to build loyalty, but thanking people for keeping things going, for keeping giving over a difficult time. It's been a real talking area that we've seen and been discussing across our charities. So to bring it all together, what does the future look like? So digital acceleration, of course, but supported by traditional channels. We've seen that direct mail still very much has a place, and it's really proven itself over the last year, particularly within Raffle. Reintroduction of free prize draws. I think that's going to be something that's going to be a bigger thing. Raffles have been really working. Prize-led fundraising as a whole has been really steady and important for charities, and therefore that starts to widen back out into other areas. So scratch cards are another area that we're kind of seeing making a bit of a comeback as well. Increasing cold mailings, as we've talked about, and more targeted and bespoke communications across channels. I think people are very keen to understand who their supporters are a bit more and talk to them in the right way, particularly with the new channels coming on board, building those supported journeys and focusing on stewardship and retention within that to keep people coming on and then keep them playing. So just to sum up, really, prize-led fundraising has proven its worth. The response and gifts have been up on Raffle, income strong and steady on lottery, all the way through COVID-19 as well. So it's really set its place as a reliable form of fundraising, and is starting to move and morph and become more exciting all the time. So yeah, a really strong, wonderful way to fundraise that offers lots of opportunities, both currently and moving into the future. That is the end of me. That's my details there. Please do get in touch if you want to ask any separate questions that we didn't cover off in the session today. But what I'm going to do now is stop sharing and hand back to Helen, who will take us forward into the next bit.
Thanks, Helen. Fantastic. We've had lots of questions coming in while you've been presenting. So a few of them are about definitions, if that's all right, Hels. Would you be able to just tell us a little bit? So, in terms of warm raffle, when we're talking about warm raffle in this, what would be your definition of warm raffle?
A warm raffle is a raffle campaign that goes out to a warm base. So that will consist usually of a direct mailing to current raffle players, cash potentially, regular givers, anyone else that's already on your supporter base, along with kind of organic social, organic email, I think, to warm supporters as well.
Thank you. And then active players in comparison to that then?
Yeah, that is your raffle playing segment. So your 0 to 12 month raffle players usually. So people that have played your raffle in the last 12 months.
Brilliant. When you mentioned average gift, does that include just tickets or tickets and donation?
Tickets and donations. We look at the total.
Brilliant. I have a list, Hel, sorry.
No, that's fine.
So I think Marcus asked what the source of the benchmark benchmark data was and the sample size? Do you have that to hand? Yeah.
Oh, now then, I might need to come back to you on the sample size. The source data is our own aggregated anonymized data. And I think off the top of my head, it was about, oh, no, I'm going to get them around the wrong way. I can get it off the report and I'll plonk it into a Q&A bit.
We'll put it into the follow-up email. You need to get it right.
Yeah, I
do. So somebody asked whether we have any figures for the percentage of upgrade asks that result in attrition.
Oh, now then, not aggregated. I've done it for specific clients, but obviously can't do that. So I don't have an aggregated anonymized one, no, but I can probably just double check and give a benchmark.
Yeah,
come back on that one.
Maybe Kathleen, drop you a line.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. If that's all right, Kathleen, we'll do that. Okay, so I think there are some other questions, and some of them I think might be for Emma. So we'll start a poll and people can put their answers through the poll, and then maybe we'll get Emma on and she can talk a little bit about pooled lotteries and the relative benefits of pooled lotteries. So I'll launch this poll. There's 4 questions. Hopefully everyone should have that on their screen right now. 4 questions to go through, looking at your own prize-led fundraising, what you currently have, what you're thinking about having, how important it is to you, and I can't remember what the 4th question is. That's terrible. But there is a 4th question there as well. And we will share those questions at the end. So Emma, if you're there, are you able to just give us a little bit of a rundown on pooled lottery versus in-house run? Not sure whether Emma's.
Yeah, can you see me?
Yes.
Ah, good. Yeah, so pooled lotteries are definitely a new sort of trend that's come out over the last year, certainly for us. And we have literally last year been busy developing a product that we've just launched, which is very exciting, and already had 5 new clients sign up, so that's also very exciting. So the kind of value with a pooled lottery versus maybe your own draw is the kind of financial sort of risk and onerous kind of tasks around getting enough players in your pot in terms of recruiting them for that first prize is reduced. So for instance, with our pooled lottery, there's a fixed price and we kind of pay for all of the prizes. So a lot of charities like to be in this kind of community of pooled lotteries, and it kind of makes them have the opportunity just to focus on the sort of recruitment side of things. We can spin up sort of websites that are bespoke to them, and I think does that sort of answer the question?
Yeah, I think the question is, how would it compare to an in-house? And I guess a pooled lottery means that you can test the waters, see whether or not you can generate it, what income you can generate, how many players you can generate. And then if you get to, I guess, a tipping point where it makes sense to bring it in-house and make it your own lottery, you can then migrate those players over into your own in-house lottery that is then no longer pooled. I guess that's the question, is can you do that? Is that a good strategy? I think that's what you're asking, Alexandra, from your question.
Yeah, sort of definitely touching upon that. A lot of our clients are sort of going for the pooled lottery approach because, again, the financial risk and pressure on them is reduced, because with a pooled lottery, basically you're only paying for it if somebody is playing for it. So there isn't big recruitment budgets and drive that's required to pay for your own drawed lottery. A lot of our clients are basically sort of signing up for the pooled lottery, putting their toe in the water. It doesn't cost them anything if nobody plays. So it's about going out and just sort of feeling the way, and is there an appetite? Are their supporters receptive and responsive? Have they got the right sort of demographic for a pooled lottery or not? And the beauty with sort of our products is they can try and test that water with a pooled lottery, and if it's successful, then they can move on to their own draw. And with the own draw, you have a bit more say and control over what that prize pot is. But obviously you have to be responsible for sort of recruiting enough players to pay for the prize pot. But we're still talking, you know, low numbers. But yeah, look, pooled lotteries are definitely going to boom and explode this year. That's the real consensus that I'm getting at the moment. So like every other day I'm talking lotteries, and it's a very exciting space to be into.
Great. So Christine asked about what kind of budget you'd recommend to launch a pooled lottery versus in-house. It's probably dependent on each individual charity. So Christine, that's probably one. If you give Emma a call or drop her an email, she could probably talk through your own charity and see what the relative requirements would be there. I think that's probably the best way, because it depends, doesn't it?
Yeah, it depends what your goals and objectives are. You know, is it around income generation? Is it around acquisition of supporters? Or is it about just having a digital product in your fundraising portfolio? So it's very much kind of what you're wanting to achieve. And generally we kind of work backwards with our clients. So if they're kind of sort of saying, right, we want to be in this place in 18 months time, then we can work backwards to say, okay, in which sense you will need around X in terms of recruitment budget. We can also work with Helen, who does a fantastic job of looking at sort of, you know, what channels work best, and the cost per acquisition around those channels as well. So yeah, we can certainly look at that for you.
Brilliant. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to end the polling now and share those poll results. Thanks. I hope that was helpful, Alexandra and Christine. But if you want any more information, then we're on the end of an email or a telephone. Email address is charities@woodsvalldata.co.uk. So let me end the polling here and see what people have said against each of these questions. So what prize-led fundraising products do you currently offer as part of your fundraising mix? So weekly lottery, definitely the forerunner there, closely followed by Raffle. No surprises. It's interesting what other prize-led fundraising products are offered. So free prize draw, which over the last few years has taken a bit of a backseat, was very popular about 10 years ago. I think it's becoming more popular as an acquisition tool. So it's interesting that 19% of the people attending today operate a free prize draw. Scratch cards are in there, event-based draws at 10%. We've got Tombola, 7%, and then 14% of the people attending today don't run any prize-led fundraising products. So it's great that you're here today, and hopefully you're finding out some information about some that you might want to run. So coming on to that question, looking at products that you might want to introduce to your fundraising mix, it seems that Raffle is probably the most popular one that people are looking to introduce, and Raffle is definitely a great product to introduce to help cross-sell into your warm base and diversify your donor base as well, but really give your existing donors something else, increase lifetime value, etc. And that's potentially something that we can talk about later in the discussion with the panelists. 21% looking to introduce weekly lottery, and also 21% looking to introduce free prize draws, which is interesting. The other, scratch cards, event-based draws, definitely in the running. And 33% already have all the prize-led fundraising that you need, and that's probably people who already have a very full prize-led portfolio. So how important is it to your wider fundraising activity? Well, for 5% of people here today, it's the most important part of their fundraising, and that's certainly the case for charities, a lot of charities, or very important, depending on the mix of other fundraising products that you have. what's interesting there, not very important or the least important, doesn't score very highly, which shows us that prize-led fundraising is actually a very useful product to have in your portfolio. And then what do you believe we'll see as the biggest acquisition channel for weekly lottery specifically in the future, given the fact that COVID-19 has put a stop on lots of the traditional acquisition? How are we going to acquire in the future? Are we going to go back to face-to-face? Are we going to look at different channels? And what's interesting here that social media is definitely over-indexing there at 45%, saying that social media will be the most important channel for weekly lottery acquisition in the future. Closely followed, coming back to that traditional face-to-face, and then other digital and DRTV following up close behind. We've got direct mail there at 8% as well. So direct mail can be very valuable for giving your existing donors opportunity to convert into a lottery product. So that's really interesting. So hopefully that you've found out where you compare and how everybody here. So that's based on 330 odd participants who have participated in that poll. So thank you very much for doing that. Okay, so we are going to go now to our discussion and invite back Maria, Pam, Rosie, Holly and Helen. And I'll just introduce each of the panelists here today. So please do keep your questions coming in. I know there are some questions there that haven't been answered so far. So we will look to answer them as part of this session. So I'm really pleased to introduce our panelists. We have Maria Novell, who is fundraising and commercial director at Guide Dogs. Maria joined Guide Dogs in 2008, working in a variety of fundraising roles, becoming director in January 2018. Before coming to Guide Dogs, Maria worked in marketing roles in commercial organisations before moving to the third sector with positions in the RNLI and the British Liver Trust. Maria is a member of the Institute of Fundraising. Hi, Maria. We have Pam Witherington. I will put my teeth in. Pam Witherington, Fundraising and Marketing Director at Essex and Herts Air Ambulance. Pam joined the charity in 2006 as Interim Communications Manager, and now she's Fundraising and Marketing Director. She develops and oversees many initiatives and focuses on new areas of income that generate vital funds and raise awareness for the charity's work. She manages an enthusiastic team of fundraisers dedicated to providing the best helicopter emergency medical service for Essex and Hertfordshire. Hi, Pam. We have hi. Holly Alcock is Senior Individual Giving Manager for Alzheimer Society. After nearly 4 years at Alzheimer Society, Holly leads the team that manages the Big Win weekly lottery and quarterly super draws. Holly's and the team's main priority for 2021 or 22 is to bring weekly lottery private site acquisition back successfully after a year's hiatus, and to continue to grow income from the super draw after a great performance in 2020. Hi, Holly. And Rosie Fearon. Hi, Rosie. Rosie is Products and Propositions Manager for individual giving at the National Trust. Rosie has been managing the low-level fundraising programme at the National Trust for 4 years, and her remit had previously included both appeals and Raffle. Her role is now refocused on to concentrate on new product and proposition development as the charity looks longer term at the role that public fundraising can play in growing support for the work of the Trust. Hi, everyone. So we're going to start with a few questions around, or a few topic areas to discuss. Probably the first one that we'd like to look at is what do you see as the role of prize-led fundraising within the fundraising mix, and whether it's changed over the last year during COVID-19. So anybody want to kick us off on that, or shall I pick on someone? Pam, you're on my screen. I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Well, prize-led fundraising is actually really important for us. We run a very successful lottery. We have around 180,000 chances a week in our lottery, so that is incredibly important. And we decided a number of years ago to actually focus on building that and have that as our core. Once we'd got that to a point, back in 2008, we then looked at raffles, working with yourselves, which was one of the best decisions I ever made, because that again has given us another stable source of income. And when we launched with one raffle back in 2008. Very quickly we moved to 2. I resisted moving to 3 for quite some time, but back in 2017 we moved to a 3rd raffle, and we now run with 3 raffles a year very successfully. And I have to say, as a regional charity, you know, we are not a large national charity, so we don't have massive pots of data to draw on, but as a small, reasonably small regional charity, we have been able to make raffles hugely successful for us, and definitely are a strong contributor towards our bottom line.
Lovely, thank you. So Holly, how about you? How does Raffle fit within the fundraising mix at Alzheimer's?
Raffle is super important at Alzheimer's Society as well. We too have a really established raffle programme. We have quarterly raffles, so 4 times a year, alongside our weekly lottery as well. I definitely think it's important to have it in the mix, as compared to a cash ask. It's like super fun, super engaging. It can be completely different to your core branding as well. We have a different fun and exciting branding for our raffles, which is really which really makes it stand out. It's also like a lower price point. That £1 ticket amount makes it really accessible, and as Helen covered in the presentation earlier, means that the audience is a different demographic, so it means you're reaching out to a different pot of people as well.
And also, oh sorry,
no,
Holly, carry on. Go on, Holly.
I was just going to touch on how important it was in the last year as well. We've seen, and I know that lots of other people have been saying the same, real growth on our raffle during COVID-19. And I think it's been really important that we've been able to offer some nice light relief in the raffle, real difference to our cash programme, which has been that more real emergency messaging.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, I saw a question from Tracy Owen at some point, just asking which prize is more successful, cash or a chance of winning a car or a holiday. For us, it's always been cash. I think probably most charities would agree. So that's definitely the route to go to, if I was you. And the other thing that always amazes me is the amount of our supporters that not only play the raffle, but the huge amount that send in donations, just pure donations as well, which is incredible. So yeah, not only do people feel they've got a chance to play and potentially win, but some people just purely want to send you their money, which is amazing.
That's great. So there's a question just come in from Julie about what amount of prize, what are your prize funds for raffle and weekly lottery? What are you offering?
For raffle, it's not actually, they're not that high, you know, £2,000, £1,000, £500, you know, as we go down. So the for us anyway, that's our sort of level for the raffle. And then obviously with the lottery, again for the weekly lottery, they're low levels. £1,000 is our top prize, unless you go into the super draw, which obviously for 2 chances you can win up to £25,000. So you've got the weekly lottery offering, or you've got the super draw offering.
Good. So is that the same for everyone else? Maria, how do your prize funds compare? Are they
yeah, ours are slightly higher than that. So our raffle is about 10,000, and our weekly draw for our lottery, so we have at Guide Dogs we have 5 raffles a year and a weekly direct debit lottery product, and the direct debit lottery product is about £1,000 a week. So we have with quarterly super draws as well. The team, so thank you to Chris, Sophie, etc., who I know are on the call, but the team have done quite a lot of work recently in benchmarking around prizes, because we have found it's a big driver, both in terms of attracting, so not just the size of the prize, but also the number of prizes, but also in terms of reducing attrition, so cancellations on your weekly direct debits, in terms of whether people have won or not. So winning is a real factor. It's part of the motivation for giving.
Yeah, the Gambling Commission did some work a little while ago around motivations behind playing, and that was one thing that came out really clearly. I think, like, massively over-index was the opportunity to win was a real key driver.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I think COVID has happened, obviously, and if it does result in a hit to the finances across the country and does trigger a recession, then I think, we did see back in 2008 a real move for give to get rather than give to give, as I would classify it. But people who are having to spend money are looking to do it in a way that does social good at the same time, because they can't afford to donate in the way that they have in the past. So having products in your portfolio that give people something extra, I think is really important.
It's a value exchange as well, isn't it? There's something in it for them, but there's the kind of affinity with their chosen charity. And I think it's that feel-good factor around a raffle or a lottery.
Yeah, and I don't think people should overestimate, because people do sometimes treat with caution and say, people who support you through this type of product don't necessarily support you in the same way that a charity supporter would, that you recruit through a cash program, for example. We've never found that. Our cash and raffle donors cross-sell incredibly well to our other charity products.
That's really typical as well. Yeah.
Would you say that's similar for the National Trust, Rosie, in terms of being able to cross-sell into other products from prize-led?
Yeah, very similar. And as a charity that has predominantly been focused on membership as our main form of support for a long time, it's really helpful to have a product where there's that extra incentive. And so similar to what Holly was saying as well, there's something around the low level price point, and also the sense of fun with lottery that with raffle that works really well for us, and sort of being able to sort of position around some of the really positive stuff that we're doing and how people can get involved and make an impact. So yeah, it works really well for us, and we've seen some really good results with putting a gifts in wills box on the bottom of our raffle pack. So we've introduced quite a clear 4-step process. So as part of that, do you want to make an additional donation? Name and address, all the personal details. We've also got would you like to request some more information about gifts and wills? We see that it's been really successful, and it's a really important part of our pipeline for gifts and wills now. And it's that constant drip feed sort of with our audiences, and just something that's in the background, so people are used to seeing it, and if they're at a sort of a stage in their life where that becomes relevant, then they can sort of tick it when that opportunity sort of arises for them. So no, it's worked really well.
Fantastic. Just coming into some of the questions that have been appearing online. So from Laura Larrett, you have one here that says probably directed to the panelists with a lottery. So do you find that offering the lottery product to existing regular donors cannibalizes that regular gift, or do they tend to do it on top of their current method of support? Shall I ask? I'll go to Holly first.
I don't think it's something we've necessarily tested too heavily. I do think the opportunity, like asking someone for an upgrade on their regular gift, might not be so attractive, but adding in that the element of winning, so an addition, like a lottery entry as well as a regular gift, might be a nice different thing to add to the portfolio for that supporter. But I wouldn't say I have a definitive answer on that one.
I have done some research over the times around that, and on the whole, cannibalization is pretty minimal. I think you kind of get a mix of different types of people. So either they are more of a regular giving type of person, therefore lottery is just not of interest, so they won't convert, or they're really engaged supporters, so they'll do both. Exactly like Holly said, it's another way to give that's different rather than just upgrading. And then you've also got I think people that just, you know, actually would come in and do a weekly lottery and not do a regular gift for exactly the opposite reason. They're a different kind of person. So they don't tend to give up one to do the other, as far as I can tell. They'll either do one or the other, or happily do both.
We found the same, Helen. So yeah, we'll have a cross sell between our regular giving products, and what we found is, and we continue to do it, so it's not cannibalizing, but it can sometimes help if you've got people on regular giving products who don't want to upgrade. So it's another way to get them to give.
One good thing about it is obviously they are used to then regular giving, aren't they? So you kind of got that, you know, they're okay with that way of paying and that they like that way of paying. So that can kind of show how it can cross over quite well, removing that barrier.
Okay, I'm not sure, Duncan, where this has come from, but the question is, how did a regional charity get to 180,000 chances a week? I'm guessing that's for you, Pam.
So, well, we really focused. When we made the decision, when I came on board, we had about 19,000 chances a week. I stopped all marketing activity, so I could review the position and have a little look at what we were doing. And simply, we decided that we wanted to get back out on the streets with canvassers, and literally that is what we committed to. I was astounded when I started to do the figures and to see how potentially the growth over a number of years, how that would affect the bottom line. And I was amazed at how big this could be for us. It took some persuading in terms of the trustees, and we asked them to really commit, because obviously the upfront costs are quite significant. But we went through that painful process, if you like, and we got there, and we obviously have never looked back. We are in a position now where the money from our lottery, and I'm sitting in this building today, we go operational from this £4.5 million building today, and that money, you know, predominantly is because we've run a very successful lottery program, and we've been able to purchase our own helicopter as well back in 2018. So the lottery for us has enabled us to really focus on our future and the delivery of our service, and we have done that through committed canvassing approach, and that we use two different companies so that we put the business around to make sure we cover both counties really well. And even though we outsource that, we actually treat it like it's our own, so we take ownership of it. The canvassers are part of our team, they are our ambassadors, and we treat them as such, and that's hugely important for us. We get involved in their training, what they're wearing, what they're saying. You know, it's hugely important. Obviously now we are looking to diversify and trying to get digital acquisition to a much higher level, so that's my challenge over the coming years. I hope that answers the question.
So too, I think it answers both of Duncan's questions. What about stewardship and retaining players in the program? So once you've been out and you've I guess it's private sites and door-to-door kind of thing.
Absolutely, yeah.
Once you've been out and recruited the players, how what initiatives do you have to then keep them?
We have a magazine that we produce. We used to produce it 3 times a year. We now produce it twice a year. That goes out to all of our lottery players so that we can keep connected, keep them updated, obviously, on what we're doing, and more importantly, what we're spending the money on, and how their very valuable £1 a week is contributing to the operation. Funnily enough, we are literally just mailed out this week about 11,000 letters to lottery members that have been with us for 10 years or more. And that's the first time that we've ever done that. So we are actually reaching out and recognising and thanking those very loyal players. And we've done that for the first time this week. We do other ad hoc pieces of mailing during the year as well. We might send them a patient story, just to keep them updated with little bits of information. So yeah, we try and engage as best we can. There's a balance obviously between not doing enough and doing too much. So yeah, I hope we get it about right.
Yeah, that stewardship piece feels to be increasing in importance, I think, around all programs. At Guide Dogs, Maria, do you how have you found your supporter journey planning?
Okay, yeah, so we did some work with Woods on that, would you believe? We've been working with Woods since 2009 across our raffle and our lottery. So Chris and the team have been testing various things, looking at different key points where cancellations increase through the journey. So currently we have in place, we do quarterly updates, welcome pack. We have obviously a reactivation telephone call and letters program. We have recently tested, the last couple of years, tested ring fencing our lottery donors for the first 6 months, and that's had a massive impact on attrition over the first 6 months, huge. And now the guys are looking at attrition key drivers points through that journey. Now we've got that set up to look at how we start looking at triggered comms around what's actually happening at that point. So how do we, look at if drop off before first draw, second draw, etc. What do we do to trigger those points to try and bring attrition down? So it's a constant direct marketing test and learn program, as I'm sure it is for everybody. It's trying something, seeing how it works. If it works, keep going with it. And that's us really.
Holly, Rosie, anything on stewardship and retention around prize-led?
We've introduced sort of quite recently, and again, sort of working with our account team at Woods, sort of some different techniques to re-engage sort of players that might be lapsing, and generally just keeping people into that 0 to 12 month sort of playing sort of zone, if you like. So we've started doing an early bird draw, which we have done previously, but we'd not done it for a number of years. So the time felt right that bringing it back in would make it fresh again, and that it really helps being able to sort of test different things. And we've also done golden ticket as well. So we did that for our Christmas campaign in 2019, I think it was. And again, that uplifted response across the board. So it's been really helpful to sort of look across at what different people are doing, and to be able to add in different techniques to make sure that it feels fresh, and that people are continually being given different reasons to play.
Yeah, so those incentive pieces.
Yeah, really helps.
Holly, how about you on your raffle program? How have incentives helped at all?
Yeah, definitely, which I think probably isn't a surprise. We have tested a lot of different incentives with our super draw. Most recently, we included a scratch card in our Christmas 2020 super draw, and we've seen it perform exceptionally well. It came in line with obviously a very generous Christmas last year, with the uplift on raffles anyway due to COVID, but we saw our Christmas 2020 raffle outperform the previous year by 15%. So really fantastic growth there. And we know from our weekly lottery players, which has been mentioned a couple of times already, that the more chance they have of winning, or people that have won are more likely to stick with you. So we took that learning to the super draw, and giving those players that instant win with a scratch card really incentivized them to actually enter the draw. So yes, incentives work exceptionally well.
Brilliant. Does anyone do anything different to that, Pam, Maria?
No, I mean, we've tried, stickers, golden ticket, all of the sorts of types of incentives, or quite a lot that you've recommended, and we've tried and tested. Some work and some are really, really good for us, and we've obviously kept them as part of the program. So yeah, it's just being open, isn't it, to doing the testing and seeing what works for you and for your supporters.
Yeah, so we do golden ticket as well. Sorry, I just take this because someone's asked this in the notes. It's a kind of an additional chance to win. So if you get a golden ticket, you go into an additional draw where you can win a cash prize. So outside of the actual raffle, I can't even speak, raffle, sorry. So we use that as well. It's uplifted response by about 11% on average over the course of time that we've been doing it. In terms of other incentives, we really struggle to beat address labels.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone else does, but it's the old traditional stuff that seems to work.
I think, Helen, you've got a lovely stat on that.
Yeah, I think, on the right segments, it can get up to a 40% uplift on response rate. So yeah, as an average, anywhere between sort of 10 and 20, really. Yeah, labels were always the one that would make the massive difference. I think as well, if you think about the demographic of a typical raffle player, at least, in the days gone by up until, now, but still going strong, is they are direct mail responsive, but they seem to be quite mature. So anything that helps them, they struggle to write potentially, or, you've got diseases like arthritis and those sorts of things kicking in at that age. So anything that helps make life easier for them to respond, as well as being a bit of fun, is a good thing.
It'll be interesting to see if that changes
as
we all become more digital. Because I don't know.
Do you know what? Yeah,
we're seeing younger raffle players coming through.
It will be super. Like the next 5 years are going to be so interesting. I mean, direct mail has just been so reliable, hasn't it, throughout this last year, particularly on Raffle. But as to how that's going to change and whether it will change quickly, it's hard to know.
Definitely seeing a digital coming into its own. I think it's still low percentages in terms of the percentage of a raffle response, but it's growing, isn't it?
I think the real shift will come is, with acquisition into Raffle online. A warm player base responding online from a direct mail pack, I think, will always naturally be quite low, but
I think it's quite interesting. So our latest raffle, so our spring one this year, I mean, it's still a really small percentage of, don't get me wrong, in terms of digital, but we only actually got online with our raffle last year, so it's only taken us, quite a long time. But actually 74% of new raffle players through digital were under 45.
Yeah, that's brilliant, isn't it?
Unbelievable. I mean, how they will react going forwards, we don't yet know, it's kind of, but it's going to be interesting to see how this changes raffles and lotteries moving forward, I think.
And the supporter journeys around that, kind of how you do get them playing again, and if they play again, and what you do about that would be interesting. Lots of testing coming up, I think.
Are you seeing a change as well in weekly lottery acquisition through the different channels like DRTV and social media? Is that something else that's changing demographics in terms of the player profile?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think COVID drove us all to do things slightly differently. So the loss of face-to-face affected guide dogs through lottery and Sponsor a Puppy, as it did every charity who utilises the channel, but they were big channel percentages for us for our regular giving products. So we did manage to replace them, but there was a lot of digital and TV work going on last year. But what that has done is it's massively opened up channels for us that we didn't have before. And it will mean that our channel mix, even this year and going into next year, will never go back, I don't think, to what it was.
Yeah. And I guess we need to track over time what the attrition and value, lifetime value is across those different channels. So it's really interesting times. We've got some decent numbers in there now.
New spreadsheets. New spreadsheets.
Yeah. Do you know what? Yeah, that's a key point though, isn't it? Because it's so hard, like attributing offline and online and keeping track of different channels across offline and online is, it's a challenge.
Holly, how has acquisition been for you over the last year in weekly lottery? Where are you seeing? You mentioned in your bio about bringing weekly lottery private site acquisition back successfully after a year's hiatus. What does that look like going forwards?
Yeah, we too, our face-to-face was a big chunk, a bit like guide dogs, of our acquisition. So I think 2020 was difficult in bringing the volume in through digital and DRTV, which were already part of our channel mix, but the space was quite saturated with lots of other charities as well. But yeah, the focus for us this year is getting face-to-face back to hopefully where we saw it prior to COVID, which will be a difficult challenge. But we've already gone live and it's looking okay so far to start with the first couple of weeks. So I'm really hoping that as everybody's getting back out there and everybody's wanting to talk a bit more to other people when they're out and about, we'll see a natural uplift. And being really open with people we are speaking with the effect that COVID had on the charity as well. It's looking like it's working really well, rather than a pure prize heavy focus that we used to do pre the last year. We've been a bit more split in the messaging that we're going out with.
Okay, that's really interesting. So more cause than previous. And I'm just thinking about different prize-led products. Alexandra asked a question about prize draws. Do we have any stats on the kind of consumer behaviour or motivations of somebody that's come in through a prize draw compared to lottery or raffle?
They tend to be, I guess, more prize focused, potentially, is the one thing that really stood out from anything that we've done around that, even more so than raffle and lottery. So they will tend to come in and do it, and it's finding the people that will do it again. They can sometimes not convert into other products as well. Yeah, it does vary from charity to charity though. Having said that, I've seen prize draw work really well as conversions into raffle and then lottery, so it's worth testing. But they are quite prize motivated, I think, is the one thing that probably stands out there. So if you are trying to then cross-sell them and get them to do things again, the prize is the key.
Does anyone have any other experience from your own charities about prize draws? No, I think prize draws came out of fashion, didn't they? Just recently, just coming back in. So it might be something that we look at again in a year's time.
I've actually made a note to talk to you about prize draws, because that's something that we don't do. So yeah, I'm quite interested in having a chat about that.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because you kind of, obviously they sit outside of the Gambling Commission because you don't have to pay to enter. It's a donation. It's free to enter. Sometimes it's just tricky. You don't get quite as good ROI depending on your prize compared to a raffle or a lottery. So it's kind of getting that balance right, is like where it sits. And
we tested it 5 or 6 years ago, and that was maybe even longer than that, and it was to do with around the time, do you remember Gambling Commission, and whether you included acquisition as part of your 80-20 split, and how much you could spend on raffle acquisition was an issue at the time. So we tried prize draw as another route in. It wasn't great for us, but that was a long time ago. The world's moved on since then.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where if you can get them converting well into other areas to get lifetime value from them, it's probably worth it. But as a one-off campaign, the ROI can sometimes struggle compared to other things. So it's almost something you put in on top as an extra rather than replacing a raffle, for example. The ROI probably wouldn't be as good. Yeah.
Acquisition for raffle.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Because acquisition for raffle has been quite challenging, certainly post 2017, 2018, when the whole cold mailing lists became
GDPR.
GDPR and all that. So in terms of acquisition, I guess it's been quite challenging for raffle. Ria, what have you been looking at for raffle acquisition at Guide Dogs?
So we still use partially addressed mail and door drop, and we have probably quite behind the curve. We have got onto digital last year, just due to internal issues, not because we didn't want to. So we're doing more on digital and online now as well. And as I said, that's bringing in quite a different type of donor. So it's with all things, it's kind of testing it and trialing it and seeing what happens with those donors and how, because the CPA, or sorry, we're going acronyms, the cost to recruit donors through digital is lower than we would see through PAM or door drop. But we need to, before going full steam ahead, you need to look at what those guys do in raffle 2, 3, 4.
Yeah. How do you find that at National Trust, Rosie, in terms of digital? I think have you been exploring digital more for Raffle?
We have. I mean, we've had some similar challenges to Maria at Guide Dogs in that, sort of systems challenges and sort of various sort of systems integration have been a bit of a barrier, you know, for what sort of long term the sort of the position that we want to get to. But I think in some ways, I think sort of COVID has been a sort of a real shift for us in terms of sort of how we look at sort of fundraising within the national trust and the sort of the role it can play in the future. So we're sort of diversifying, so it's not just sort of focusing on membership as a product. So I think in the long term, I think you know, we will be sort of embracing digital and sort of looking at the sort of different opportunities we have for Raffle and sort of going into lottery. So yeah, it's an exciting point, but yeah, sort of a long-term vision.
Yeah. I've got a question actually raised from Katie May. She asks, other than cash donors, what other segments of charity supporters are good prospects for prize-led fundraising? What do you find at National Trust are good segments to cross-sell into prize-led fundraising?
For us, it has tended to be the older audiences. I mean, we have obviously we have a big membership program, and traditionally we've always done profiling of our current Raffle base and then sort of targeting it at people who look like that within our wider membership base. So that it's sort of self-perpetuated as sort of a certain type of Raffle player. So, you know, that has been sort of, you know, probably 70 plus. And I think sort of going forwards, we will be looking at sort of different ways of I suppose showing the breadth of what people can do if they are members. But yeah, that's how we've approached it previously. Brilliant.
Thank you. I'm aware that we've probably got about 7 minutes left. I'm going to run through some questions, and panel, if you feel that you want to jump in and answer, that would be great. So I'm just trying to think of some that will be relevant. There's some that I can cover off separately. So do most charities generally outsource the admin for raffles, especially as many are offering online as well as online? I think that's probably one that we can cover off, unless anybody wants to take it.
I mean, we definitely obviously outsource. We wouldn't be able to do it in-house. I do know other air ambulances that do, but for us, it's about the whole package actually that we get from Woods when we outsource that sort of administration process, which is really vitally important because you don't have the resources in-house. But you know, just everything that you provide, and especially the reporting, because we learn so much from the reports and the sessions that we have with you before and after the raffle. So yeah, I wouldn't want to personally at the moment, I wouldn't want to do it any other way for us.
I think the theme as well, Helen, that I'm definitely getting from the various prospects that I'm speaking to and clients is the fact that they don't want to get it wrong. You know, there is a lot that could go wrong around gambling commission rules and regulations and red tape, and they just want to outsource that to somebody else and know that it's all sorted, or, you know, reputable ELM, external lottery manager, and just not have that pressure and risk, and just know it's going to get done. So I think that's quite key. It's not just about the administration side of things, it's around the compliance area. And obviously we've got a team here that can help with anything related to sort of compliance, and again, it's just having that support.
It's that listening ear, and it's someone to run your thoughts against, particularly when new stuff comes out and your interpretation of them, because some of them are so open to interpretation that it's really helpful to have that. And I think there's been a question saying, when you all started out with Pride-less fundraising, what issues did you have with the 80-20 split, forecasting and phasing of acquisition? And again, I would say speak to someone, because it's what you have to declare as part of 80-20 and what you don't. So I think understanding that is vitally important, to know what the potential is of your programme when you start it.
And going back to the pooled lottery, the 80-20 rule is quite easily satisfied, whereas with your own pooled lottery, with your own draw lotteries, you do have to seriously look at the 80-20 rule, you know, income versus prize pot, etc. So it's a very important area. Certainly
at launch, you need to get the right number of players playing before you launch into your first draw. So that's something to be mindful of in terms of the 80-20 for weekly lottery in particular. Got a question here from Imi Launchbury. Sorry, Imi, if I've pronounced that wrong. Has the pandemic changed the way or how much you talk about your cause to raffle or lottery players? And I think, Holly, you touched on that briefly in terms of being more cause during the pandemic. Has anyone else found that your tone, your messaging has changed over the last 12 months?
Yeah, I mean, for National Trust, we, I mean, we've always been sort of quite close to cause, because so much of it has been to members. But I suppose what the last year has sort of enabled us to do is to be able to dial up that need and the sort of the sense of sort of risk to us, and the income that we've lost, and sort of how they can get involved. So still being a sort of a product that is light-hearted, that has lots of joy, but also be able to sort of convey that message at a really important time to people about how they can help, and why, you know, why we really need their support. So, and we've had really good responses. So yeah, that's, you know, it's worked really well for us.
I think for us, because we're a medical charity, obviously a lot of people, and obviously when we talk about COVID and the fact the pandemic, and we are a medical charity, people have wanted to support medical charities, I would say, because they're looking for ways to be able to support that that side of what's going on in the country. So I think we've benefited from that as well, which has been helpful.
That's great. I think we're probably going to need to wrap up the session. Does anyone have anything to add? I know we haven't got through all of the questions here that have been asked. I don't know how you feel if I pop those in an email. If anyone's got anything to add to them on the panel today, then maybe I can send that out to the participants later on this week, and just see if we've got any ways that we can answer some of those. Anything that you'd like to add about prize-led fundraising that we haven't covered off in this session? Nope, brilliant.
Not doing it, you should try it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Great.
Yeah, no, I'd echo that.
I would also, yes, without a doubt.
I do genuinely believe that we're getting to a point where supporters are starting to expect that there is a digital kind of prize product in their chosen charities portfolio now. I think it's going to be expected, so let's all get involved.
Absolutely. Thank you to Rosie, Maria, to Pam and Holly, Helen and Emma for joining us today on this session. We hope that everyone that's participated today, that's attended the session, has found it really helpful. I would really be grateful if you could be kind enough to fill out some feedback for me, and hopefully
it's really useful having that, isn't it, to help guide us.
Yeah. Get your phones out. Scan the QR code that should be on your screen. Let me get rid of some of these questions. See, I've been trying to follow you as we're going along. Please scan the QR code to download the feedback form. I'll send an email out later as well. with that information on it, so that you can, it's just a quick Survey Monkey, take about 2 minutes to complete, but it will really help if you could do that. Also, a couple of other announcements. We've got another mini webinar happening where Helen's going to present some more in-depth data on player profiling for Raffle and Weekly Lottery. That's happening on the 18th of May. Pop it in your diaries now, about 11 o'clock. And I'll...
Oh, am I? Brilliant. I knew the date.
in yours, Hels. And I'll send out a link to register for that to everyone as well, just in case you find it interesting. Keep an eye out in your emails. The webinar will be available on demand. It has been recording. Hopefully, technically, it will all be okay. So we'll get that out for everyone. These reports, the data, everything that we've presented today, that Helen presented, has been prepared by the Data Strategy and Insight team at Woods Valldata. If you want to talk to us about anything data strategy and insight based, please do get in touch. Either email Helen at helen.door@woodsvalldata.co.uk or use our charities@woodsvalldata.co.uk web address. So thank you again for attending from all of us. A massive thank you to our panelists for giving your time up today. We hope you found it valuable. We hope you found it interesting. Don't forget to do the feedback, and hopefully we'll see you again at one of our events in the future.